Good morning. It's Eddie G's Music World for October 29th, 2018. We are going to dig into a couple of lists. And that first thing I'm going to mention is that there's an upcoming show that's just announced from Montreal and North America. KISS. And I'm going to probably go. I just feel that they're ending the touring years. They're going to do an Elton John thing. 3 years of touring. You know, they're going to soak up the money. We know Gene and Paul are unbelievably good at soaking money up. I don't think you're going to see a dollar left on the table when Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley are around. They just make sure that it all goes to them. And I would hope, but not expect Ace Frehley or Peter Criss to show up. Ace Frehley, there is a chance that he would show up because he's on better terms with the two big shots, Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons. He seems to be on a talking terms with them. At least for sure with Gene, he's always seems to be popping in on Gene's little shows that he does or whatever. And as far as Paul Stanley goes, there's hints, there's little tiny stories that maybe, but nothing about Peter Criss. And Peter Criss, he has done a live thing about a year or so ago, and I saw it, and like a little show for about 1,000 people he did in New York. And he still could drum, but I don't think that this guy's going to want to sit there and deal with all the animosity and jealousy over money and criticism from Paul Stanley that he does not play well enough, and writing in his book, Paul Stanley, how he wasn't drumming really. It was basically sensors that he would tap the drums and they would sound great, but it wasn't really him. And it's like, these guys hate each other. Peter Criss and Paul Stanley, there's just nothing but hate in between those two. But you know what? Money has a way of trumping hate. So maybe they'll call him up and do a few shows. Who knows? I would be thrilled to see all four of them, but I really am not going to expect any miracles. I hope there's no boring opening act. They're coming March 19th, 2019 to my town. They're coming across Canada, North America. The last time I saw them was 2009 with the replacement guys, Tommy Thayer and Eric Singer. So I'm assuming those guys will be there. It's not bad. It wasn't a great show. It was one of those shows that you just go through it. You say it's okay. Most shows I see now are no longer, have lost all of their excitement. They're just okay shows, or they're a little below okay. This year, I've seen the guy from who used to be in the Scorpions and then UFO. Can't remember what his name is. And he was a great guitarist, but not thrilling. I saw Deep Purple, Judas Priest. I wasn't blown away by that show either. It sounded kind of like they were patching stuff together. He comes out in his motorcycle. That was okay, we've seen this before. Pretty good, but nothing enough to great. And even Slayer, there was a big excitement for them. They did a great job, but I don't know. Maybe I'm getting too old to go to shows. So that's why they're down to 2 or 3 a year instead of 8 or 9 a year, because I just don't get a big thrill out of the shows as much as I used to. Standing around, you wait, you sit down, you get up. It's like you have to drive an hour to get to the concert, an hour to get home. Okay, that's my concert rant. But I can't see myself not going to KISS, despite the fact that Stanley's voice is shot. And dealing with 2 replacement players, I'm sure I'll go. Okay, we're heading into the finale of the top 100 guitarists, according to Rolling Stones, and we're pretty much at the end of the list, meaning we're at almost at number 1. But you know who all these people are. Number 3, I might have said is last week. I don't remember. Jimmy Page. Okay, there's a lot of people expected him up there, I'm sure. Known for his Yardbird years. He was in that band for a while. And did a lot of session work, like with Tom Jones, and of course he got Bonham and John Bonham and Robert Plant, I believe, were both in Band of Joy. Could be wrong. And he recruited those two. And John Paul Jones was a well-known session musician, bass player. And also, of course, he did play a lot of synthesizer and keyboards in Zeppelin. So they all got together and, well, we all know about the plagiarism and all the lawsuits and all the black artists that sat around and their grandchildren had to sue them because there's about 8 or 9 songs sounded similar to these artists' riffs that they played. But of course, Jimmy Page, despite the fact that maybe a little bit of his stuff was borrowed from other people, has to be given all these accolades, and he's great and all this. So there he is at number 3. And it's funny because he joined the Yardbirds, and you placed the guitarist who's at number 2. After one album, this next artist left the Yardbirds and said they were getting too commercial and he was more a bluesy guy. And of course, it's a guy you figure would show up, Eric Clapton. Again, we know about his Cream years, his solo albums, his bluesy songs. Apparently he was thrilled with Hendrix. He got a big thrill out of that. And he watched him live and he was crying. I don't know. I've heard all these stories so many years. I've had a chance to see Eric Clapton like a good 4 or 5 times. I mean, some reason I just never felt that I want to hear long, kind of dragged out solos, which is what he kind of can do. And his voice, he's a decent singer. I mean, I'm not putting him down and not saying he's not worthy of all this worship that he's been getting over the years. I'm sure he is. I'm not a guitar aficionado. But overall, I mean, you can't be around that long and not have the talent that everybody says you do. A couple of things about him. A few years, he must be a very down-to-earth guy, because a few years ago somebody was in a laundromat and he was just washing his own clothes in a washing machine, and this is a guy's worth probably $80 million. I mean, you'd think he'd pay some lackey to go out and do his laundry. And another story, he was playing pool. Some other guy was playing pool in a pool hall in New York, and this guy was just hanging out playing pool, no entourage, and it was Clapton doing that too. So obviously he's a down-to-earth guy. Give him credit for not being a snobby rock star that thinks he's too good to hang out with the low-life regular crowd that he does. So that's my story about Eric Clapton. I'm sure if you're a guitarist fan, then you got a lot more to add about how he plays, but it's just not my thing to go on and praise him for how he plays, because I don't study his music that closely, which is the case for all these guitarists pretty much. Number 1, if I haven't looked, but I haven't heard from Hendrix, so I'm gonna guess. It's so predictable. Let's see. Could I be wrong? Oh my God, what a shock. It's Jimi Hendrix. The world worships him at his feet. Okay, he is great. Like I said before, Clapton had seen him live, and, the story is that he was all, drippy-eyed because he saw the god Jimi Hendrix, and I'm sure he was as good as that. I'm being a little jaded about the whole thing today, maybe. I'm just not, in the mood to praise and, drip honey on all these big stars. It's just my mentality for the morning. It's been a crazy couple of weeks that I'm not going to go into, but Hendrix, yes, all the songs, All Along the Watchtower, covered the Dylan song, all the Woodstock stories, we heard them all, we know about them all. He went to England from Washington to get more popular, which happened, and after being popular in England, he started to drift into the United States radar and got more popular there, and famously died, of course, pretty young at 27. Joined the 27 Club with Janis Joplin and Jim Morrison, and I think Kurt Cobain died at 27 too. So people make a big deal out of that. There was drugs involved with him. This guy, he died, and there it is. It's just that's all the excitement about Jimi Hendrix. Yes, he's number 1, the greatest guitarist of all time, according to Rolling Stone on their list. Okay, I don't know enough to say it's not true. I don't know enough to say it's true. It's opinion. Just kind of like the next list that I'm about to drift into. This is one that I'm doing because I'm a pretty lazy guy sometimes, and I just don't feel like doing a lot of research on music. So I'm going to drift through this list with you and learn, and maybe I'll end up looking up people from the list to learn more. Since making music, listening to music is a big thrill for me. I do it for nothing. Almost nobody's listening. Hi to Grigster, who says my voice makes him go to sleep, which is, you know what, I'll take it as a compliment because at least he's listening. And of course, Creepa Freak is a regular on listening to me, and I listen to him. I think he's going to be booked solid in a couple of days because it's almost Halloween. Maybe he'll go out with his kids and ring the bell, and people will give him all the candy and money they can find because Creepa Freak is one freaky looking guy. He says he's ugly underneath that mask, but I'm guessing he's not. It's just, you know, part of his shtick, as they say. Okay, let's start it off. Rolling Stone. This should take a good 4 months. Outcast. Okay, I know a bit about Outcast. They had that song Hey Now, kind of a catchy little song that got a lot of airplay. I know they did a movie. The two guys who are the big boy and I don't remember the other guy's name. They did some kind of a retro movie about 10 years ago. To me, they seemed to catch fire for about 3 years. And then you kind of like, I don't hear about them anymore. But then once I looked into the fact, you know, that one of these guys is producing and writing stuff for other people. So it's a case of, to the guy that turns on AM radio, which is no longer me, I don't hear much about these guys, but behind the scenes activity could be going on with one or both of these guys in this group, and maybe there's some kind of magic happening, but they're considered important to hip hop. They had a lot of social commentary in their music, a lot of funk, and they had songs like Rosa Parks from this, which I don't know, and Hotlanta is where they're from. So let's get to number 499. B.B. King, again, a guy that gets praised constantly. You know, this was a blues master from all those years. And this is one of his albums from the 70s, Live in Cook County Jail from 1971. So this is a jail in Chicago in 1970. And I guess similar to Johnny Cash, he had this album, he performed there. And there was The Thrill Is Gone was on this, which is one of the few songs that I know by B.B. King, because he was not a crossover guy. He wasn't a top 40 guy. He didn't have Chuck Berry type hits. He's a blues guy, and no station around here put a lot of time into the blues. So I know all about him, but I'm not an aficionado. Okay, this group I've kind of heard a little about. The Stone Roses, more a British phenomenon. They're at number 498. This must be the debut album called The Stone Roses. There's a lot of hype about these guys. Not really a crossover band, maybe a great band. I do remember listening to one or two of their songs. This could have been on those albums. They didn't last long. They fell apart. But this album got a lot of positive reviews. I Am the Resurrection was a song off there. But it was considered an innovative album for Britpop from that era. But what happened to these guys? I think I remember hearing that one of them kind of went on to do something else, but I'm not going to go dig up details about the Stone Roses. They didn't impact me greatly in my life. Next on this massive list of Eddie G's Music World top 500 albums of all time. Well, it's Rolling Stones made the list. I'm just talking about it. Number 497, The White Stripes. Can somebody please tell me, is that Meg White his sister or his wife or ex-wife or his girlfriend? I can't remember. I always looked at the two of them, and maybe I think I heard that it's his sister, but then I thought maybe I heard it wasn't. Either way, they're one of these bands that has great guitar work in it. Meg White is the drummer. I know that they've come to my town a few times, never gone. I know that his Jack White's latest stage latest stage has specific light structure developed in Montreal because they were interviewed, and Jack White is coming to Laval, the Laval Arena, which I was at for Slayer, in the next few weeks, or maybe it just happened. I don't know, but it's recent anyway, or coming up soon. And they never had that hit single because this music is always not standard pop. So, you know, I like that Seven Nation Army. Maybe that's on this. I don't remember. And about 3 or 4 other songs. So for sure, they deserve some kind of positive mention on this list. I'm sure I'm going to be running into a lot of rap and a lot of stuff I don't know. So bear with me. There's going to be like gaps in my knowledge. I cannot listen to every CD and every barely known or underground act that comes out, you know. But let's take a look at the next one. Boss Gags, yeah, I do know something about him. He came out in the Steve Miller era. Kind of, I think he was on one of Steve Miller's albums. He was in this band. There was some definite connection. And he had hits like Lowdown. Loan Me a Dime was another bluesy type song. And Dwayne Allman was on there, of course, from the Allman Brothers. Not sure if the hits, I think in 1969, there were none of his like Lowdown or Lido Shuffle on it back then, but I remember hearing about him like in the very early 70s. But this album, kind of, I don't know much about it, but if it made this list, it's probably pretty good. He actually tours still. I mean, based on the fact that he recorded almost 50 years ago, 50 plus 20 is probably 20, 25, could be 70 to 72 years old. I admire people that keep working. If they're that old, I mean, I'm a little younger than that, and I'm not working lately. I may have to with the stock market dropping like that, like it is. Bonnie Raitt, Give It Up, 495 on the list. The only music I really know about her is they give me something to talk about and maybe 1 or 2 other songs from her. She's kind of in the country vein, dipped into the poppy stuff, the folk stuff, bluesy stuff, but not, I mean, all the accolades, all the respect, all the musicians think she's brilliant, and I have heard her, and I do think that she has talent, but she's kind of under my radar. This is her second album that she made, and she recorded in Woodstock, New York. I don't think she played in Woodstock, but I could be wrong. She's from California, and I think she still makes records. It's something I should maybe pay a little closer attention to. Since she's on this list, it must be that there's a lot of volumes of great music that she's done that I don't know that well. Next band is a band that I actually dipped into a little bit, tiny bit. I went, because I saw them on the charts here and there, and I said, who is MGMT? Who are these guys? And I like their music, actually. Kind of a bit of a funky style, offbeat. And they came to Montreal. I almost went, and nobody wanted to go, so I didn't go. But if you do go and listen to them, you'll probably be pleasantly pleased that they have... there's one song that definitely stood out from the others as far as having a catchy style. But they've had about 3 or 4 CDs on the charts and albums. A lot of keyboards in it. I'd say it's worth looking into further. The few times that I have heard them, I've been impressed with them, and I've seen a few of their videos on different video channels that I get. Much Music and a couple others. Wilco. Okay, this is the band that is at number 493. Say what you will, I did see them live. They opened up for Neil Young in 2007 or 8. And I don't know. It's perfect for Neil Young because they had this like country-ish rock mix and it kind of dragged. You could see that they were doing something impressive, but it was dragging the show. And I was like, Okay, there's one song I like. The other five or six I not couldn't care less about, and I was saying, when are they going to get off the stage? Which, when it comes to opening acts, I really say that a lot. I even say that about headlining acts sometimes. There's bands that I pay 150 bucks to see, and I can't wait for them to get off the stage. So imagine Wilco, who was opening for Neil Young. They didn't blow me away, that's for sure. But people respect them, and they're around. Eurythmics, more a pop band that I know a lot about. Their album Touch, 1984. Yeah, she had the voice, she had the look. Stewart was the guy behind the scenes. Producer, he wrote a lot of the songs. Synthesizers were the main feature of this band. And they churned out a nice pile of songs over the 4 or 5 years. And then Annie Lennox went solo and cracked out a few beautiful songs. So yeah, they had an impact on me. They definitely worked hard on their music. There was a rumor, not a rumor, a guy told me his best friend was a groupie for Annie Lennox, which she wouldn't be my first choice, but I could see maybe back in the 80s she has a great body. She's kind of a tough-looking girl. Whether or not it's true that this friend of a friend slept with her or not, I'll never be able to verify, but it sounded like a true story. And hey, look, men are sleeping with women, picking them out of crowds and banging them left, right, and center over the last 50, 60, 80 years of music. So it shouldn't be that shocking to believe that Annie Lennox grabbed a groupie or two over her touring years. If I ever do, I think I tweeted Annie Lennox and asked, but Annie Lennox is not going to answer a question like that. But if I do meet her, I'd probably be very tempted to ask her that, which I'm sure she wouldn't answer. Who's next? Let's see. There's no way to guess. 491, Albert King. Here we go with the blues guys. They're coming up again on my list. I just saw Albert King on my rock guitarists list, and I had nothing to say about him then, and I have equally the same amount of nothing to say about him now. He's from Stax Records, which I do know. They had the Staple Singers and a bunch of other black acts on their label. And it's almost pushing me to listen to this guy because it's the second time in a week that I'm mentioning him on the list. He played with Booker T and the MGs, who had Green Onions, one of those songs. He had some kind of a bluesy song called Crosscut Saw, Laundromat Blues. So that was a bit of a crossover into the rock world. So maybe I'll just write his name down, and yeah, I'm going to have to listen to it. ZZ Top number 490 with their early album. I don't know if it's their first or not. Tres Hombres. Have seen them twice, and yeah, they great guitars, and they actually, along with Aerosmith, are amongst the two bands that have stayed together for the longest time. So ZZ Top 1970 to 2018, that's 48 years. And about the same time for Aerosmith, around 1970. But Aerosmith did have a period where I think Tyler kind of ducked out of the band for a few months. So did Joe Perry. He left and had his solo album out and was replaced briefly by Kelly, somebody named Kelly. So there was a little shift here and there with Aerosmith, but they're all back together, the originals. So ZZ Top and Aerosmith, in my recollection, are the two bands that have stayed together the longest, interrupted in the case of Aerosmith, non-interrupted in the case of ZZ Top. How the hell they get along with each other for so many years is beyond me. Usually there's massive fights that break people up, fights about money and popularity. Yeah, ZZ Top was an innovative band. Little known fact, ZZ Top called themselves ZZ Top because they wanted to be easily to find in the stacks of records when the people walked in the record store. They were alphabetical when you used to go into a record store in the 70s. You'd go from A to Z, in a row for a lot of record stores. So if you go to the end of the line, it's easier to find than if you go to the letter D or F or whatever and look for bands that start with F or letters in the middle. You have to kind of spend a little more time. But they wanted to be found quicker, which meant they hoped their sales would be better, which probably maybe it helped. I don't know. But I know that Bill Hill, one of the guys, met Jimi Hendrix backstage. I think they did a show, or he did a show, and it was opening for Jimi Hendrix, or maybe he was just hanging around the club. I don't know the whole story, but he definitely did meet Hendrix, the lead guitarist, Dusty Hill, I think. Yeah, La Grange was a big song that was on the album. Jesus Just Left Chicago. This is the bluesy era. And then, of course, they popped it up a little with synthesizers in the 80s, and that worked out amazingly for them. They sold millions and millions of more records by doing that. And unlike a guy who hosts a massive show called Eddie Trunk, I have no problem with rock bands adding synthesizers to their music. He has an issue where he thinks it's less rock and roll if you throw a synthesizer in. And I don't think he cares what I think. I'm pretty sure he doesn't. Next, here's a band I just mentioned, Kiss, who I'm going to go see despite the fact that half the band isn't there anymore. 489, Kiss album, Destroyer. So I'm a little surprised because this Rolling Stone gang I didn't think was a big fan of Kiss. The fact that they're on here at all is impressive. This was, I think, their 5th album, possibly. They were huge with it and sold out stadiums. They had their own pinball machine, makeup, TV movie. Beth, I think, was on Destroyer. And, Rolling Stone probably begrudgingly threw this on the list because based on the fact that they waited for, let's see, they got in around 2015 and they were around since 74, like with albums. So 25 years, 84, 94. So from 1999, they were eligible, but it took them 15 or 16 years to be put in. So the fact that they waited 16 years after their eligibility to put them in the Hall of Fame is an indication that Rolling Stone is kind of like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in that they don't give a lot of respect to Kiss because I'm not going to say Kiss was Genesis. They weren't masterful, brilliant geniuses, but they were for sure came up with some great songs and wrote some great. I think Frehley was a great guitarist. Paul Stanley was probably a pretty good vocalist. I wouldn't say amazing. Same with Gene Simmons, but their marketing was amazing. That's why Gene lives in a mansion is worth 400 and something million bucks. Probably two or 300 million of the 450 million was due to his marketing. And the fact that Paul Stanley's worth a lot less is because Paul Stanley got screwed over in a massive divorce, according to him in his book. But okay, Destroyer had all those songs. Okay. 488. I think we're due for a black artist. Let's see. Husker Du. I kind of know them a little bit, but they're one of these critically acclaimed bands. Here, their album was New Day Rising, 1985. Because I used to read Cream magazine and Trouser Press magazine. If you can find these online, go ahead and find them. And also Q magazine here and there. So they would talk about these bands a lot, give a lot of accolades to these lesser-known bands. Like Husker Du, it's one of these bands that, from Minneapolis, had a bit of a following. They were not, I'm not criticizing them in any way. They influenced bands like Nirvana. They had their style. I think I remember hearing a couple of their songs. I liked them, but you can't keep up with 10,000 bands that are out there, especially when they're not supported by local radio that you live in the town you live in. So definitely Husker Du got a lot of good reviews in those days, so good for them. We're listening to Eddie G's Music World. We're in the midst of counting down the top 500 albums of all time, according to Rolling Stone magazine. 487, can I guess? Let's just throw a guess out there. The Who. Let's see if I'm right. Cyndi Lauper. Okay. Yeah, that was a pretty big album. She's So Unusual. Her first record. She was in another band before. Then she had some issues with her manager that was dating her, and he helped put this on the map. She had also this wrestler that was in the video that helped her out with a few things or got her promotion. But she was the first female performer to get 4 top 5 hits, I think, on the first album. Girls Just Want to Have Fun and Time After Time were for sure big. And hey, she's hung around. I mean, she had an album of standards about 20 years ago or whatever. She's definitely had a lull in her career in the 90s. Like, this came out in 83, was huge, then 2 or 3 more. By the late 80s, she was already kind of lost the audience mostly. And they maybe drifted in for one song here and there. And she's kind of an oldies act, she never became a Madonna, so she can't, when she came out, I remember the talk was, oh, Lauper and Madonna, they're both huge, big, massive stars. And then Madonna kind of obviously blew her away, not with brilliant talent, in my opinion, just she knew how to manipulate the media better, just like Donald Trump, president of the great United States, knew how to manipulate the media. And Madonna would always pop in stories about some young guy she's doing and, a book about sex or whatever. She knew how to keep the media interested in. So that's what it's about. A lot of these bands, it's keeping the spotlight on you. Some of it is not about talent. Madonna did not come out with masterpieces. She's not brilliant. She's above average. She's an average to above average singer. She's a decent songwriter. She co-wrote and wrote some of the songs that she's known for, and I'll give her some accolades and give her some credit. She's a talented woman. But based on all the success she had, I'm going to say 50% was her publicity machine. It worked 24/7 back then. She knew how to be in the news. She was always on top of everything. So the more people talk about you, the more popular you are, the more records you're going to sell, the bigger your castle's going to be. I'm sure Cyndi Lauper has, I wouldn't say as much talent, maybe. I'll be a little fair to Madonna. She maybe just has like 60% of her talent, but she wrote this Kinky Boots play, which is doing very well right now. But it's just the way it worked out. She may or may not have been as talented. She had a bit of a weak, squeaky voice, Lauper, so maybe it wasn't going to sustain her for 25 years of popularity. I mean, Madonna, 83 to, let's say 83, 84 to 2004. That's an amazing stretch of, that's 20 to 25 years of hits with a little tiny, maybe slight drop over the years. Now, of course, she's slipped into every single solitary 80s act's fate, which is she's an oldies act, but she's so massive that her oldies act sells out arenas, whereas Cyndi Lauper or, Rick Springfield, that type of act sells out 1,000-seat little theaters, Still popular, but Cyndi Lauper wants to go to an arena, she better have 3 other big acts to go along with her, or the arena is not going to accept her because they don't want to sell 2,000 tickets and be stuck with a massive bill to pay when there's only 2,000 people show up to a Cyndi Lauper concert. They know if Madonna comes calling, it's going to be 17,000 to 18,000 people. It's just the way music works, the business works. It's not always fair. At least she's not a failure, Cyndi Lauper. She's done great over her life, and she's still around. So, Earth, Wind and Fire, another one of these bands that, they got quite a bit of a successful run. 486 is the number that the band went to on this chart. That's The Way of the World. Very influential. Always liked them. They always had very, sort of like a mellow style at times, and then a little upbeat with the horns. They've been touring. Like a few years ago, they came here, but with a band like that, I mean, really, how many of those guys are still in the band? 1975, the start of this album. I mean, you're talking 43 years, and this might not even be their first album. I don't really know. So, are you getting Morris White? Is he still there? He's the founder. Are you getting like Phil Bailey? I doubt it. Then there's about 5 or 6 other guys that were mainstays from the early years. So, what are you getting when you see a Earth, Wind & Fire concert? Probably going to get a lot of guys that learned the parts and they weren't there in the original band. But here I am talking about going to see Kiss, where 50% of the band's gone. So I guess it's the norm right now. You just can't expect it. But I always like Earth, Wind & Fire. I remember 15 years ago, I got my then girlfriend to buy their greatest hits, and it was like a 3 CD package. So they definitely contributed. Brilliant musicians. Go see them if you're out there. Maybe just forget about who's in the band at this point. Just have a good time. I don't even know if they're still touring. Here's a band that I saw. Number 485 on the list. Pearl Jam with their album Vital. How do you pronounce this? Vitalogy. Okay. And let me see if I know any of the songs. Nothing Man is on this, I think. I saw them live in '98. Poor Cheap Trick had to open up for them, and they were like ignored because in 1998 Pearl Jam was massive and Cheap Trick was no longer a big deal. So kind of embarrassing for them to have to play for a bunch of 18-year-olds who thought Cheap Trick were a bunch of old men, probably. But Pearl Jam live, one of the best shows I've seen. A lot of energy, a lot of great talent, singing, guitars. They've been around forever. They're still around. They just got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I think it was last year or the year before. And they even brought in ex-members that were gone after a few years and brought them into the acceptance too. Eddie Vedder, lead singer, and my son is still mad at me for calling him Jeremy. And I didn't really name it after the song Jeremy. I just made a joke about it. I just chose the name for the hell of it, and it happened to be a song that I know about a creepy kid that burns houses or buildings or schools down or whatever. But no, my son is not that bad. He wouldn't burn down a building. I hope. Okay, next. 484. Let's see, can I throw in a guess? If I get one of these guesses right, I want unbelievable praise. Who haven't we heard from that I would know? Let's see, this guy loves Dylan. Let's throw Bob Dylan in there and throw it against the wall. I swear to God, I do not know the next album. I'm not getting to it. I'm guessing. Mott the Hoople, All the Young Dudes. All right, this was a band that I saw. One guy in this band, Ian Hunter. He was the lead singer. The song All the Young Dudes, written by Bowie or co-written by Bowie. They apparently loved Dylan when they were starting out, and then Bowie got to them and, changed their course maybe a little musically. I think I bought one of their albums, and they had a couple of other good songs on there. They covered Sweet Jane too. And this is kind of a sort of a glittery phase for Mott the Hoople. They had other records after that, but then Ian Hunter kind of drifted off into other things after a few years. I don't know what the timeline is on the Mott the Hoople. I think Mick Ralphs, was he the guitarist in Mott the Hoople and then go on to be in Bad Company? I seem to remember that fact. If I'm wrong, well, nobody really will be that upset if I'm wrong, but I have a feeling that Mott the Hoople produced a guy that ended up in Bad Company after that. And we are headed towards 483. Can I try another guess? I guessed Dylan for 484, and they mentioned Dylan in the description of the Mott the Hoople album, so I kind of was on the right path. Okay, let's switch gears. Let's guess that it's a Doors album, number 483. Gang of Four, Entertainment. number 483. On the Rolling Stone Top 500 Albums, Gang of Four, famously reviewed very, very heavily in all these magazines that that rated albums and rated records. From 1977, they began kind of a bit of a political band, funky guitar style. Not really an expert on them, but I do know who they are. I seem to remember they're kind of a bit of a Clash type band, but that's about all I can really add to it. I'm not a major aficionado of Gang of Four, but I do know who they are. The chances are never became a massive band, but I doubt if they're still together too after all these years. Should I go with Chicago at number 482? Let's guess. Steve Earle. Oh, this guy just came to town. I think I remember I bought the cassette, the one with the song about the whiskey, Copperhead Road. That's the song that I bought. But this is Guitar Town. I'm wondering if this has that Copperhead Road on there. I mean, other than Copperhead Road, I really don't know much about this guy. But he did come to town. I could have gone to the show, and I didn't go just because I didn't want to sit through a show where 90% of the music I don't know. Would have been nice to meet him. I'm sure he's got some unbelievable stories. And he wrote songs in Nashville. I'm sure he influenced other people too. A bit of a country style guy, a little rock, plays guitar. And the Guitarist Town is the name of the album. Number 481, I won't guess. D'Angelo. Good thing I didn't guess, because I would have never guessed D'Angelo and his album Voodoo. No, I have absolutely not much to say at all about this. He recorded at Electric Lady Studios. That's the one that Jimi Hendrix built. Kind of influenced by 70s soul singers. But I swear to God, I don't believe I have ever heard this guy's songs. Maybe I did and I don't know. He has a song called Untitled, How Does It Feel? And they say that, from what I've read, it's kind of a Prince vein. So maybe this guy is worth listening to. If they're saying it sounds like Prince, then it's a pretty high praise. But no, I do not know D'Angelo. I doubt if anyone really does. Well, maybe they are people that know him, but they won't be the ones listening to my show. Let's see, can we get to number 480? We're almost getting there. Raekwon. I once studied Raekwon when I was 15, but I quit because I'm a lazy guy. And I wasn't into all that kicking, and but that's not the same. Raekwon is somebody else. Only built 4 Cuban links. Okay. Some connection to Wu-Tang Clan, I think. Was this guy in Wu-Tang Clan? I don't know. Maybe I've heard of Wu-Tang Clan, but it's rap, and there's I've read a mention that there's some kind of some kind of connection. Maybe he was in there, maybe he wasn't. And you know what? I really don't care. Number 479, Funkadelic. Another one of these bands like George Clinton type of thing. I think, yeah, he was in this band. And the album was called Maggot Brain. I went and made an effort to listen to some of their stuff. Very funky, good stuff. Not a mainstream guy. Maybe in the black communities, he was really popular. But around here, nobody really played him. So I have to have read about him, which I did. And he's the guy with multicolored hair, purple, green, yellow, whatever. He's probably had that hairstyle for years, George Clinton. And he's the leader of the album. Very funky guy. P-Funk was another. They went by that name as well at some point. But when I did make the effort to listen to them, I was impressed with it. So that was a one-time deal. You know, when you read and hear about a certain act so many years on in, and you don't know their music, at some point you get curious. So I don't think I'll be listening to them a lot in the future, but we'll see. Country Queen at number 478, Loretta Lynn on her greatest hits. I know I never promised you a rose garden. That was a crossover song. Was she married to George Jones, who just passed away? One of these, or did he marry Tammy Wynette? I got all these country girls mixed together. It's not fair to just do that, because I'm sure Loretta Lynn deserves a little more respect than just lumping her into another country singer. But, you know, this is the kind of stuff that a lot of the lyrics are about men, you know, standing by men and the man stealing the woman. And she definitely was a massive star, one of the country greats. But having the only song I can think of her was I Never Promised You a Rose Garden. And there was more than that, of course. So, sorry, Loretta. Oh, one thing I remember about her. I think I remember hearing that when she was 14, she was a mother. And when she was 28, she was a grandmother. God knows she must have been a great mother. If you just keep adding 14 years to that, who knows how many kids are in that family. I don't know if it went to the third generation that they had kids at 14. So I'm not going to guess, but when you're a grandmother at 28, that's a young grandmother, man. Okay, 477. Could it be, let's say Men at Work? Why am I guessing that? I have no clue. Merle Haggard, another country star. They popped him in. Down Every Road. He's a guy that came to visit, do a lot of touring over the years. Many, many years. Kind of a Nashville kind of guy. Capitol Records, MCA, and Epic. But he had a nice voice. I've heard a couple of his songs. There's one or two that if I really spent hours and hours, I'd be able to remember which ones. He might have been also one of these guys that did work with Chris Christopherson. Or was that Waylon Jennings? I'm getting my country singers mixed up. I know Waylon Jennings, Johnny Cash, and Chris Christopherson did a couple of albums together, The Highwayman or something, but maybe Merle Haggard wasn't part of that. I heard that he came to Montreal in the Indian reservation about 10 years ago. My ex-boss saw him live, went to see him live, and said it was pretty good, but he got to be pretty old, and he did pass away in the last 4 or 5 years. Notorious B.I.G., speaking of passing away, number 476, Life After Death. I'm sorry, but this Biggie Smalls stuff never was my thing. Okay, I know some woman took over his estate. What's her name? I don't know. He had this rivalry with Tupac Shakur. This is all stuff that's out of my realm of interest. I think, what's his name? P. Diddy did a song about him, I'll Be Missing You, which was whatever that thing was called, but which took music, obviously, from the Police, Every Breath You Take. That was like a tribute to B.I.G., because P. Diddy obviously was in that scene and he knew him. He was this big, heavy guy. Did they do a movie about him? I have a feeling one came out, but I won't swear to it, or they're working on one. You know, I think I remember one or two songs that he did, which I heard his raps. The best thing about him is that Artie Lang, who was on the Howard Stern show for many years till he got booted off or not renewed, he memorized one of the B.I.G. songs and he recited the whole song lyrically on Howard's show about 12, 13 years ago, 15 or whatever. That was pretty funny. Howard Stern should get him back. That would be great. Okay, number 475 on Rolling Stone's top 500 albums of all time. Let's see, we had 2 country stars, 1 rap guy. Who could it be now? No, that was Men at Work. I already guessed them. I'm going to go with an Eminem album. Elvis Costello and the Attractions. I'm not right. Armed Forces, number 475. I got that album with my then friend Stephen, who's the friendship ended probably 3 years later when he met a girl that made sure he got rid of all his dope smoking friends, which I was one of. Armed Forces was a great album. Um, Accidents will happen. You know, you had that big Saturday Night Live performance. You can see it on YouTube. He was definitely off the wall type of approach to music, punky, but pretty intelligent. A lot of people are mad at him now because he won't play Israel because he doesn't like Israel's treatment of Palestinians. I'm not going to get into all that. I don't really get involved in Israeli politics. I don't care if he plays Israel or if he plays the moon or he plays Saturn. Doesn't matter to me. He's was married to Diana Krall. Diana Krall is a jazz singer that tours a lot, a Canadian. So he married her, has some kids with her. I think he has a new album, but this is a guy who has a new album out every year for the last 45 years. So it's not really, can't keep up with a guy like this unless you're a diehard fan of Elvis Costello, where you just pounce on every album that he comes out with, which I don't do, but I do. I can probably think of about 5 or 6 songs that he did that I liked. And this era was when I was really into him. So number 474. Who am I going to guess? Who would they care about? Put them up. Let's go back to Dylan. Manu Chao. Oh, wow. Boy, do I listen to his stuff. 474 on the list. Proxima Estación Esperanza. Okay. Maybe he was a big deal in some other country. They compare him to Bob Marley. Okay. Kind of an acoustic guy with horns, beatboxes. Maybe I shouldn't be so critical about these guys that I don't know. Doesn't mean they're not worthy. They just didn't hit my radar. I mean, I can't. I don't have enough time in the day to sit and listen to all these obscure type of guys. So that's all. I don't have much to say about them. Maybe I'll listen to them. I won't. Number 473, a band that I do know from that great song How Soon Is Now, and I'm sure there's a couple more out there. The Smiths. They came out with Morrissey and Johnny Marr's guitar was in there. And they were kind of in the early, the kind of alternative scene. They had this Johnny Marr's worshipped as a guitarist, so he was in there. And Morrissey, of course, I've talked to him about him because he showed up on another list, how he's strict vegetarian and won't come to Canada because they kill seals. And okay. I like Morrissey's voice. Those few songs I do know have been pretty well done, and I believe this is their first album, so go ahead and listen to it. I like the guitar work too, so it's worthy. Oh, I should have guessed George Michael, but I didn't. But he's at number 472. Very commercial album, Faith. This was is after he left Wham. I did see him live, and I loved his music live. It was very great. He didn't play any instruments. He sang, but he sings beautifully. He danced constantly. He had top 5 hits like crazy on this. I Want Your Sex, kind of a Prince-ish type of song. Since passed away, very well known for his gay antics, and I call them antics because he was in a public bathroom and got caught hitting on a cop that wasn't gay, that was trying to kind of nail him for soliciting. Then sadly he did die. What was it? 2 years ago? Seems to be when winter hits, these guys die. I'm sure it's going to be a couple more coming up. And that was a sad day hearing that he died, because I did see him live and I've always liked his music. And Faith, I remember 1987. I was 27. I almost went to see him at the Olympic Stadium at that time, but I had a girlfriend in Toronto, and I went to see her, and that happened to be the weekend that But he did the show, so I didn't see that show, but I did see him at the Bell Center years later in 2008 or so. So go listen to that album if you. But these are songs you've heard a million times. No reason to go listen to songs you've heard a million times. It's great pop though. 471. Richard and Linda Thompson. Okay, Richard Thompson. This is probably his wife. Like I said, I've talked about him once before. He's a guy that gets all this praise, and he's a kind of folky guitarist. The album was called I Want to See the Bright Lights Tonight. You're never going to hear a Richard Thompson song on the radio in this town, and probably every other town. But he's got this amazing respect in the music, Celtic style, his wife then, Linda Thompson sang. Oh, excuse me, I shouldn't be yawning at my own show. It's pretty sad. Okay, this is one of the big albums. Here's a guy who's got his own rap channel on Sirius XM, which I'm getting raped financially over because I subscribe to it, and they're tearing me to shreds, charging me more, and I'm fighting with them to lower the price. And I think I got them to knock $80 off, but I'm getting killed anyway. LL Cool J Radio. He had maybe one or two songs that I thought were really interesting, but this is 1985 version. He was on Def Jam Records, but over so many years, this guy's morphed into a movie star, and I think he's got his own TV show. What is it, that show about? I can't remember, one of those crime shows. He's in that, so he's managed to sustain a massive career. He's probably done better without the rap than with the rap because he's on TVs and movies. LL Cool J. He's done unbelievably well. CSI, was that one of the ones he was on, or was the other medical show MC? I don't know. Doesn't matter. So this was one of his early records, Radio it's called. We got a few minutes left in Eddie G's Music World, still counting down the top 500 albums of all time on Rolling Stone. Let's see, what's 469? As Ronnie would say, 69! The Fugees, okay. Wycliffe Jean was in that band, and Lauryn Hill. This is the adaptation of Roberta Flack's Killing Me Softly, was the massive hit off that one. And she was in a movie from the 80s, this girl, or early 90s, I think, very slim. She kind of had a reputation for being a bit whacked out with all kinds of bizarre demands in her concert, things that she wanted, the things she wanted in her dressing room. She married one of the Marley's kids, massive fights, divorced, blah, blah, blah. Had his kid. I mean, she's another melodramatic type of girl. Great voice. The Fugees were big for a few years, and don't know if they're still around. I think Wycliffe Jean has come out with stuff, and I know that she came out with an album after this album about 2 years later, which was a #1 hit. So funny, a girl like that, I've heard she's financial trouble, tax problems. This is someone who's more famous for her. She's known for showing up late at concerts, for canceling concerts, for not showing up at all. I mean, I don't know. She's okay. I'll give her the credit for being a great talent, but the melodramatic moments outshine the music probably. Close going down the list, we got a blues act. Paul Butterfield Blues Band at number 468. I think I've heard a couple of songs off this guy. Elvin Bishop was great guitarist in this band, Michael Bloomfield. So there's Butterfield and Bloomfield. That's why I always get those two mixed up. And Elvin Bishop, who had an album which had the song Fooled Around and Fell in Love with Mickey Thomas as the lead singer of that song. And Mickey Thomas went on to become the lead singer of co-lead singer and then lead singer of Jefferson Starship. And I was talking to my buddy Grigster, and he said he liked the band and heard about all these deaths. But Mickey Thomas is still in Starship, and Grace Slick is not. She's retired. She said nobody wants to see a grandmother singing rock concerts anymore. So I think they still tour with Mickey Thomas as the guy that is the remaining singer from the glory days of the 80s, like We Built This City and No Way Out and all those kind of songs. So I want to thank you for being part of the show and listening. We're done for the week. Eddie G's Music World, October 29, 2018, finished countdown. Let's make a note that the next one will be 467, so I don't have to drift through it next week, figuring out where I left off. So thanks again. We'll see you. We are saying goodbye for the week.